What's going on, guys? It's Michael here and welcome to FudgeMuppet. Today I'm here to bring you our latest Skyrim build straight from the Forge, and this one is modded for a bunch of amazing new gameplay and role-playing opportunities. This is the Daedric Lord. The Daedric Lord grew up in the midst of chaos, seeing the impact of merciless mortals and devastating Daedric princes as they tried to grow their power. And the Daedric Lord rose from this with a burning desire to be almighty and all-powerful. He has learned to bend the forces of Oblivion to his will and enters battle with a horde of loyal Daedra servants. He controls the conflict from behind and provides the support to keep his legions killing effectively. And when push comes to shove, he uses his bound weapon, enhanced by his uncanny ability to manipulate Daedric forces to destroy every entity in his way. This build utilizes a variety of mods that add lots of neat changes but still keep the Skyrim feel we love. These mods include immersive armors for the Daedric Lord's protection and style, Aurora Standing Stones of Skyrim for the unique reimagined Standing Stone effects, Imperious Races of Skyrim to restore a true feeling of diversity among the racial benefits, Alternate Start to allow us much more role-playing freedom without the trip to Helgen, Ordinator Perks of Skyrim for a totally redesigned set of perk trees, and finally Apocalypse Magic of Skyrim to add a ton of new and exciting spells to your arsenal. Don't forget that timestamps to help you navigate throughout the video can be found in the description below, along with the mod list. But with that said, let's kick things off with the Daedric Lord's race, standing stone, and stats. The Daedric Lord is a high elf, and with the Imperious Races of Skyrim mod, he will begin the game with 90 health, 115 magicka, 95 stamina, 0.5% health regen per second, 3.75% for magicka regen, and 4.5% for stamina regen, and a carry weight of 250. Now as an Outma, he will have the Elven Supremacy ability, meaning skills are more effective when they reach skill level 100. Also, the Golden Glass ability will allow him to regenerate magicka and stamina faster when they get low in exchange for reduced armor and magic resistance. Finally, Shimmering Threads will make weapons and armor slightly weaker, but enchantments stronger. You can actually get another racial bonus if you pluck the wings of 40 butterflies. The bonus is called Contingency. At will, weave spells into an auto-cast trigger with specific conditions. We don't really worry about this bonus though, as it isn't integral to the build, but you can use it if you want. Now with Aurora Standing Stones of Skyrim, Standing Stones have all new effects, but despite that, we still find ourselves recommending the Atronach Stone for this one, but it's completely different and just too perfect for the Daedric Lord to pass up. Use this stone for two new powers. 1. Corrupted Arcana makes spells more powerful and much cheaper, but magicka stops regenerating until the end of combat. The other is Blood Price, and this allows you to transfer half of your current health into magicka at will. As for stat spread, focus on health and magicka only. The spread will be approximately 35% health and 65% magicka. This will allow your magicka to exceed a base of 500, allowing you to get 2 extra minion summons with our perks by the endgame stages. Keep in mind that if you get your base magicka to 750, you could have 5 conjured minions instead of 4, but 4 is already incredibly powerful, so we decided to maintain some investment into health. Either way, a low health investment will be compensated by your heavy armor, shield, and minions drawing fire away from you. High magicka will give you a bunch of benefits with your perk choices, and if you find you need even more magicka and you haven't been taking much damage, you can always use that Blood Price power from the Atronach Stone to convert half of your current health into magicka. The Daedric Lord was born on the peaks of Etten Nur, in the city of Cloudrest in the Somerset Isles. His early life was spent learning basic history and magic, as was the case for many Outma children. Up in Cloudrest, it was the general consensus that the inhabitants of the city were the purest of the High Elves. From the top of Etten Nur, the people of Cloudrest could see the vast expanses of the province in every direction. The city felt impenetrable at its high altitude, but that naivety was punished when the Daedric Lord was an adolescent during the time the Oblivion crisis broke out across the continent. Gates sprung up from the ground around them, and from the Eye of Fire in the center emerged beasts from the deepest circles of Oblivion. The Daedric Lord and his family were forced to evacuate in the night. With the protection of Cloudrest's mages, most of the city's inhabitants made it down the mountain unscathed, and they fled across land to seek refuge in the legendary Crystal Tower. The Daedric Lord had heard stories of this place. It was the bastion of Outma brilliance, turning mere mer into masters of the arcane arts. Once they made it inside, the people were given access to the tower's library and living quarters. Only the parapets and the outer wall areas were off limits. That was where the wizards went to await the oncoming Daedra hordes. They were safe for a time, and the Daedric Lord soon found himself wanting for entertainment. He didn't like being confined. He was used to feeling the high altitude winds against his face, and inside the tower there was little to do. As he wandered the tower, he overheard a group of angry high elves cursing names unfamiliar to him. He stopped to listen. The first one to speak had lived in Cloudrest peacefully for 300 years, and he spoke of the Mythic Dawn, an elf named Mankar Cameron, who had founded the cult and paved the way for Mehrunes Dagon to attack Mundus. The Daedric Lord couldn't believe his ears. He knew of Dagon, and according to what he was hearing, one mortal had contacted a Daedric prince, likely achieving grand powers in the process. The ranting elves continued on, claiming treachery was in Mankar's blood, as he was supposedly the bastard of an even more nefarious tyrant, Haemon Cameron the Usurper, who had attempted to conquer Tamriel nearly 200 years prior. As the refugees slandered the names of Mankar the traitor and the Cameron Usurper, the Lord couldn't help but think about how powerful they'd become. While they cowered within the Crystal Tower, Mankar Cameron worked alongside the Daedric Prince of Destruction and Chaos. After hearing the stories, the Daedric Lord's curiosity was piqued. It was a great distraction from the dire reality of their mortal danger. All the while, the Master Wizards who'd converged at the tower defended their walls against the invaders. Confusion began to sprout up among the elves in the tower. The Daedra were laying siege to the tower, but they hadn't attempted to break through the walls. The Lord was too curious to stay in ignorance, so he snuck out onto the parapets to see what was going on. Down below, the Daedric hordes waited. It turns out they weren't scared. They were trying to break the morale of these refugees. The Daedra had torture devices lined up in view of the wizards atop the battlements, and one by one they flayed and severed limbs from their prisoners of war. The young Daedric Lord should have felt disgust in that moment, but he didn't. The Daedra were predators, instilling fear in their prey. He could feel their power from where he stood, and he could feel the fear in the hearts of the elves watching. The Daedric Lord didn't allow himself to look away. The boldness of their dominant display would not break him. He would never fall victim to fear. He would be powerful and fearless in the face of adversity. If he couldn't, then he would end up like those prisoners whose screams echoed off the crystalline walls of the tower, their death throes heard and then forgotten forever. Just another number on the casualty list when this crisis came to an end. For the next few days, the survivors in the tower were woken up intermittently by the screams of another tortured hostage, and the Daedric Lord was certain that, given another week of this torment, every refugee within the tower would be deprived of their sanity. The day that the screams ended was bittersweet. The relief was short-lived, as the end of the torture heralded the beginning of the attack and the swift end of the siege. In one fell swoop, the Daedra hordes tore through the walls. All of the survivors unfit to fight, along with the scholars and historians, were sent into the secret passageways hidden in the walls of the tower. The Daedric Lord and his mother were among those who left. As for his father and all of the wizards and warriors, they remained to fight the nightmarish army that threatened to destroy their most sacred structure. When the escapees finally emerged into the light of day, the Crystal Tower was visible on the horizon. Shards of shimmering glass shattered from the walls of the tower like ice breaking off a glacier. When they hit the ground, they were lost among the chaos, where ice, lightning, and fire, so much fire, coalesced in a concoction of deadly sorcery. The survivors watched in horror, and what little hope remained among them melted away as they saw the majestic Crystal Tower tumble to the ground, crushing the chaotic tumult of war and sending a torrent of ash and broken glass high into the sky. When the Oblivion crisis came to an end, the Daedric Lord felt no relief, only a desire for power. He had lived in hopelessness like a trapped animal during the siege, and he would never allow himself to be a helpless civilian again when power games took hold of Tamriel. When survival is at stake, power means more than virtue, and the Daedric Lord was determined to become as powerful as any mortal could, like Mankar Cameron had. He spent the following decades enhancing his knowledge and refining his magical power, and he hypothesized that in order to reach the next level in his development, he needed the help of omnipotent beings. His research took him to the Daedric princes themselves. He knew they showed themselves in the mortal realm occasionally, and he knew they could be used to increase his power. He sought out as many Daedric cults and shrines as he could, eventually visiting those of Cyrodiil, and after no luck communicating with the Daedra, he took a ship from Anvil to Solitude to find the great statue of Azura. Perhaps there, after all this time, at her mightiest monument, she would speak with him. With the alternate start mod, the Daedric Lord will arrive by boat in Solitude, and from here he will seek out Daedric influence. While he is fascinated by the possibility of using the immortal princes for his own gain, he is by no means a Daedra worshipper. As far as he is concerned, he will only act subserviently to them when it will increase his own abilities. He will never kneel at their feet, actually feeling like a lesser being. When he calls upon aid from Oblivion, he does so to carry out his bidding. The forces of Oblivion serve him, not the other way around. The only time he will bend to the will of the Daedric princes is if it leads to an opportunity. Therefore, he will be treacherous if that's what it takes to gain more power. He will always be looking for ways to increase his potential, learning new spells and powers, crafting better gear, and capitalizing on all possibilities. This carries over into his factions with the main story. While the dragons are not what brought the Daedric Lord to Skyrim, the power involved with becoming Dragonborn is undeniable. He will follow that storyline, carrying out his prophecy, and he will do so for his own gain, not because he cares about saving innocent people from Alduin. This carries over into the Dragonborn DLC too, and he may be able to acquire some useful knowledge from the Telvanni remnants on Solstheim, as well as Hermaeus Mora and the Dragon Priest Mirak. Most importantly though, the Daedric Lord will do lots of Daedric quests. The thing is though, as I mentioned, he doesn't necessarily need to blindly follow their demands. If it suits him better, he will defy them. For example, he should betray Azura in order to obtain the superior artifact called the Black Star, whereas with Hermaeus Mora, he will help the prince as the power of the Black Books is well within his personal interest. He will strive to collect all of the Daedric artifacts he can. The College of Winterhold is also a helpful questline as he can improve his magical knowledge, and while the Dark Brotherhood suits his moral compass, he doesn't exactly have the ideal skill set for their questline. You can absolutely still do it if you'd like to, but keep in mind that this is not a stealth character. Lastly, Dawnguard is an option if you'd like to do it. Going with the vampires is obviously more fitting, but this build is not about becoming a vampire. If you do choose to side with the Volkihar, then feel free to embrace vampirism. After all, the associated powers and immortality may be quite irresistible to the Daedric Lord anyway. Now that we have the Daedric Lord's backstory, role-playing, and factions, let's now get into his skills, spells, perks, and his overall playstyle. The main skills for this build will be Conjuration, One-Handed, Block, Heavy Armor, Enchanting, and Smithing. Before we get into the specifics of these skills and the corresponding perk choices, these are the spells you'll want to acquire in your journey. Remember that many of these come from the Apocalypse Magic mod, which we'll be using. You'll only need Conjuration spells, but there are quite a few useful ones, all of which revolve around summoning Daedra, of course, and your sword. The must-haves are Conjure Dremora Assassin, Conjure Dremora Lord, and Conjure Zavali Lord. As for your own weapon, make sure you get a bound sword. While these 4 spells are the important ones, there are plenty of others you can use until you get them, or even after you have them if you want. These are the Elemental Atronachs and anything else you want to summon. The Elemental Atronachs are very easy to get a hold of, and they can be great for situational fighting. The Flame Atronach trumps trolls, the Frost stomps melee opponents in their path, and Shock is great for the pesky mages. Shouts like Soul Tear and Summon Durnavir could be handy additions if you'd like to put your dragon shouts to use as well. However, they aren't essential, but with the spells and shouts sorted, these are the essential perks to take from each skill tree. First up, we have Conjuration, and the Daedric Lord has mastered the ability to reach into the plains of Oblivion, plucking out the fiercest beasts to serve his every command. As a young boy, he saw the Oblivion gates erupt from the earth, and now he creates pathways of his own, using the monstrosities that emerge to wreak havoc on Skyrim. From the Conjuration skill tree, take Conjuration Mastery 2 out of 2, Feed the Monster, Mystic Binding, Soul Raider, Rend from This World, Void Burn, Hollow Binding, Dark Whispers, Covenant of Cold Harbor, Plain Meld, Signed in Blood, Atromancy, Edge of Oblivion, Elemental Potency, Summon Resist, Unleash Hell, and March of Oblivion. This is the skill that will have the most significant effect on your playstyle, starting off with Feed the Monster, which will hugely buff your Daedric servants' longevity. With this perk, you can feed them the remains of your kills, increasing their health, magicka, and stamina for 200 points for 600 seconds. Then with Mystic Binding, your bound sword will spawn as a Mystic Sword, which basically just means it's a more powerful sword. Soul Raider gives this bound sword a 5-second soul trap effect, which is great once you get the Black Star from Azura's quest. With Rend from This World, your power to summon creatures will be rivaled by your ability to send them back to Oblivion. Your bound weapon attacks will banish Conjured Daedra, deal 100 more damage to non-Conjured Daedra, and will turn the undead. Void Burn is another one which hugely benefits your bound sword. It marks your targets, halting magicka and stamina regen while draining 15 points of each for 5 seconds. When their stamina and magicka depletes, it turns on their flesh, dealing 15 points of damage per second. With hollow binding, your bound sword will reduce magic resistance of enemies hit by 30% for 5 seconds, and this is enhanced by Covenant of Cold Harbor, as when you have a summoned Daedra active, it'll double the effect to 60%. Dark Whispers will activate your Bloodlust, increasing damage by 20% and armor rating by 100 whenever you hit an enemy. One perk which tells a lot about the Daedric Lord's playstyle is Signed in Blood. This perk emphasizes using your summoned Daedra as frontline infantry while you provide support from behind. If your Daedric ally is below full health, it will use your life force, stopping your health regen temporarily while regenerating 10 points of health per second for itself. Atromancy allows your conjured allies to last 3 times longer during the day and 5 times longer at night. Edge of Oblivion puts a big emphasis on summoning and allows you to have 3 minions instead of 2, lasting 50% longer. But if you don't have any minions summoned, your magic resistance is 50% lower and you lose 250 points of armor rating. Summon Resist gives a handy boost of 50% magic resistance and 300 armor rating to all conjured minions within 75 feet. Unleash Hell gives your minions new spells, and your Dremora gain added attack power and movement speed. And finally, March of Oblivion lets you summon even more minions, equaling 1 for each 250 points of base magicka for up to 3 additional minions. This gives us a grand total of 4. Next up, we have One-Handed, and with a sword summoned from Oblivion, the Daedric Lord is perfectly capable of dispatching those enemies brave enough to get past his line of Daedra defenders. From the One-Handed skill tree, grab One-Handed Mastery 2 out of 2, Furious Strength, Clash of Champions 3 out of 3, Crosscut 2 out of 2, Falling Sword, and Windswept. The tree starting with Clash of Champions will allow you to specialize in swords, enhancing your skills drastically with perks like Windswept, which allows sideways sword power attacks to fling targets backwards up to 6 feet for up to 40% more damage depending on the distance. As a character who controls the action from behind his wall of minions, this perk can be incredibly useful for restoring a buffer between you and the more eager enemies. With a bound sword in one hand, the Daedric Lord's free hand is occupied by a mighty Daedric shield, packed full of enchantments to stop all kinds of arcane projectiles, as well as the physical attacks of his melee foes, of course. From the block skill tree, go for Block Mastery 2 out of 2, Timed Block 1 out of 2, Block Runner, Hold the Line, Deflect Arrows, Dominion, Power Bash, Skull Rattler, and Cast Aside. Block Runner is a great pick for maintaining movement, keeping in rhythm with your minions while keeping your shield raised against arrows and spells. It allows you to keep moving at full speed with the shield up. Hold the Line is another fantastic addition. Once you've acquired Timed Block, you can use this perk to grant allies within 10 feet 250 points of armor rating. All you need to do is successfully execute a block within 1 second of raising your shield. The Daedric Lord may sit back in battle, allowing his otherworldly thralls to deal with the majority of the threats, but he is still on high alert. When he isn't orchestrating the battle, giving commands, and watching the combat unfold, he's in the mix, providing support and cover. This means he's still in the fray and he needs protection. The Daedric Lord will stride into battle looking the part, like an overlord from the Deadlands. From the Heavy Armor skill tree, take Heavy Armor Mastery 2 out of 2, Heavy Armor Fit, and Face of Death. Face of Death is great for your gear choices as it allows you the benefits of a full armor set without needing to wear the corresponding helmet. In order to keep his gear just as effective as it is intimidating, he turns to Enchanting, applying arcane properties to his arms and armor. From the Enchanting skill tree, take Enchanting Mastery 2 out of 2, Gem Dust, Preserver, Regalia, Attunement, Twin Enchantment, Arcane Nexus, and Miracle. Similarly, the Daedric Lord's choice of armor isn't the kind of thing you can find at your local vendor. No, this devilish aesthetic is forged masterfully to be worn by immortal overlords from Oblivion. From the Smithing skill tree, take Smithing Mastery 2 out of 2, Arcane Blacksmith, Merrick Smithing 1 out of 2, picking Dwarven, Expert Smithing 1 out of 2, picking Orcish, Exotic Smithing 1 out of 2, picking Crystalline, and Planar Smithing 1 out of 2, picking Daedric. And with all of those skill spells and perk effects in place, the Daedric Lord's playstyle will be the following. He will not be charging into battle front and center. He will instead summon a legion of Daedric servants as well as his bound sword. Oftentimes, he will summon the Daedra before battle even begins. From From there, he will provide cover and support from close behind, attacking those who break through the line. Keep in mind that with the Conjuration perks from Ordinator, you will have a bunch of Daedra fighting alongside you, not just the two you get in the vanilla perk tree. You support and control your minions to do your bidding while also knowing exactly how to take care of yourself. Either let your enemies come to you or stay close to your Daedra as they hunt. Without summons, we are much weaker, but with them, we are unstoppable. Summon your legions before battle to begin restoring magicka, and then call reinforcements as you need. In the end, you'll have 4 summons at once. As for gear, the Daedric Lord will unsurprisingly sport the Daedric aesthetic, using the Daedric Lord armor variant made available by the Immersive Armors mod. He'll wear the boots, gauntlets, and cuirass. The cuirass will need to be enchanted with Fortified Conjuration. On top, wear the Shrouded Hood and the Bosma mask. Enchant the mask with Fortified Conjuration as well. You'll also want a ring and necklace of your choice, both with Fortified Conjuration and magic resistance. With all these Conjuration enchantments, you should be able to drastically reduce Conjuration casting costs. Lastly, you'll want a Daedric shield enchanted with magic resistance. For all of the enchanting slots we haven't filled yet, you can put on whatever seems the most helpful in your personal playthrough. Some options are Fortify Magicka, Elemental Resistances, and even Stamina Regeneration if you find yourself using the sword and shield often enough. And there you have it, guys. Subscribe to FudgeMuppet and give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Timestamps to each section of the video, as well as mod links and links to our social media accounts, can be found in the description just below. Thanks so much for watching, guys. My name's Michael, and I look forward to nerding out with you again very soon.